webinar is called Ways to Save on College Textbooks. Thank you for joining us. I am joined by Amy Berger from the CSUN Matador Bookstore.
Hello.
And so together we're going to go ahead and talk about the best ways to save on college textbooks. Of course, any tip that we provide, there's pros and cons to that, but at the very least we wanted just to share them with you. The first thing we want to talk about is just a known fact, and the fact is that college textbooks are expensive, and college students know this, or they perceive that it is. On average, students may have said that they spend between $800 to $1,000 per semester. That can definitely be true, especially if you're in particular majors where you are required to buy a lot of textbooks, or maybe certain majors that require textbooks that could be expensive. But I want you to know, and that's why I invited Amy to be here with me, there are better ways, and we have found that students have actually saved. Wouldn't you agree, Amy?
Yeah, over the last few years, that average amount of money that was spent has come down, and it's more in the $600 range if you take advantage of some of the other options that I think we're going to talk about today: textbook rentals, used books, price match, etc. So
definitely. And so we came up with 10 tips. I'm sure there could be others, and in the chat room we actually invite you to add some of the tips that maybe you know about that we don't know about, and of course we're all here to just learn. So let's go ahead and start with our first tip. The first tip we have here is to save money is to check your syllabus first. One of the ways that you can definitely save is by going to the first day of class and actually finding out which books are required and which are optional. I know that personally I have found this to be very helpful for me when I was going to school, but that was many years ago. But it does help to just kind of take a look at the syllabus. I know that some instructors actually send you the syllabus even way before, because they already have you on the roster because you enrolled in the class a long time ago or way before. So you can kind of get an idea that way. But on the first day of school, it's possible that you can see that there's been maybe some slight changes, or the instructor has changed their mind. And we do find that sometimes if they have changed their mind, then they will go ahead and make those changes, and you will usually know about it on the first day or first week of school. You can definitely save on books if required later in the semester. So for example, if you see on your syllabus that within the first 4 weeks you're going to be using this particular textbook, then maybe you want to purchase that book, and then if later in the semester they say that this other book is required, you can plan for it and maybe give you time to purchase it at a later time. What do you think about that, Amy?
Well, one of the other things to take into consideration is instead of waiting until you go to class and check in with the instructor, you may want to check out the information at the bookstore, because we would have the most updated information from the instructor. So we should have the current information for what you need. We also know that students have the best opportunity to find used books and to get their rentals before school starts, because once that first day of class hits, everybody comes to the bookstore and those books are flying off the shelf and they're not available necessarily when you want to come in at the end of your first day of classes. And using the opportunities to rent your books or to get those used books will definitely help you save money.
Definitely. Good. All right, well, our second tip is consider older editions. Older editions could be acceptable, but one thing you have to keep in mind here is that this one may or may not work for you. The reason why is because certain disciplines, for example, technology, law, medicine, require latest up-to-date information, and so an older edition may not be in your best interest, or actually may not be acceptable. But in other cases, it's possible that you can save money by purchasing an older edition of a particular book. And I'm talking about maybe 1 or 2 editions back, not going that far back. The key thing is to ask. You need to ask your instructor if an older edition of a textbook is acceptable. And what I found is in 1 or 2 editions back, usually they just change maybe a chapter, maybe just a foreword, But it could be other little things where when you compare the newest edition to the older one, that it's not that much of a difference. But it's important to ask because instructors may actually discourage it. Anything to add on that?
No, I would just say just definitely verify with your instructor before you go out to get that old edition. Usually if it's acceptable and there are books available, we will bring those into the bookstore as well. But you definitely want to make sure that the instructor is okay with it, because often if you buy those from somebody else online, you wouldn't be able to return it, and we wouldn't want you to be able to, or get caught buying a book that you weren't able to use and you weren't able to return for a refund.
That's a very good point. Yes, definitely ask, especially if you cannot get your money back. Okay, well, moving along, we want to go ahead and talk about the third tip on saving money on college textbooks. And one big one is buying used. Used books are sold at discounted prices, and when compared to a new book, you can definitely save a good substantial amount of money. For example, you can purchase books 25% less than new books. Is that correct?
Right. Our used books are priced 25% less than the new books that we have on the shelf.
Okay, and then in some cases you can even save up to 60% off when purchased online. Is it particular sites that?
No, it's usually like a person-to-person. If I'm buying my book from you online or here on campus, you might give me a better deal than the 25%.
Okay. And as we mentioned in the previous tip about making sure that the edition is correct, please read the fine detail print on what is it that you're actually purchasing when it comes to purchasing used books. Now, I don't know what you may think about your thoughts on buying a used book as opposed to a new book, but you know, when with these savings, yes, you get a book that may have notes in the margins or it's highlighted extensively, but I see it kind of like an advantage, because as you're working on this particular textbook and you're realizing, well, maybe this person was highlighting stuff that was important. Of course, always check that against the material that you're learning in class, but it could save you some time. You may be in luck and find slightly used textbooks that look new too, and that's a very good point, isn't it, Amy?
Yeah, that's really important. Some people like books that are already highlighted. Again, hopefully that person that took that class before you and highlighted knew what they were doing and give you highlighted information that's appropriate. Other people would rather have a book that's not highlighted. So if you come to the bookstore, you can look on the shelf and see, you'll find books that don't have any highlighting that are used, and you'll have ones that have lots of highlighting, and it's really to your preference. Sometimes it's just the first chapter or two. Maybe they dropped the class, maybe they gave up highlighting partway through the class.
Now, one question I do have that's just coming up right now is that if a student buys a new book and weeks later or within a certain time they come back and return it, is it not considered used?
If they buy it and try to return it, want to return it at the beginning of the semester, it would have to be in the same condition as purchased. So a new book couldn't have any writing or highlighting or bent pages or whatever. At the middle of the semester, end of the semester, they're done using that book, they sell it back to us, then that is a used book. Then it becomes a used book.
Okay. Yeah. So the following semester, someone else
purchases.
And
it's on the shelf as a used book.
Oh, okay. Very good. Very good. Okay. So moving right along, let's go ahead and we are going to be sharing 10 tips. We are on tip we're moving on to tip number 4. And this tip is regarding taking advantage of something we call library reserve and or interlibrary loans. And so these are two concepts. Let's talk about one of them. The first one is library reserve. Instructors, professors, may place 1 or 2 copies of a required book that's on your syllabus or for the class in the campus library. And so that's another way to save money. And especially if it's an expensive book, they'll go ahead and do that. You have to ask the instructor to see if they can actually place a reserve copy. Some instructors just take the initiative and do it anyways, and they will let you know on the first day of school. But if they don't, you can always ask if a reserve copy can be placed in the library. Now, one thing you want to keep in mind when looking at library reserves is you can only check it out for a few hours at a time. And if there's a list of students or a line behind you that want to take advantage of that book, then you cannot necessarily check it out again. You kind of have to get back in the end of the line. But if you're in a position where no one is waiting for the book, after a few hours, you can just go back and check that out again. And so that's just another option there. I'd like Library Reserve as an option when, for example, let's say that I do have plans on actually purchasing the book, but I'm still saving up to try to get enough money to go ahead and purchase it. In the meantime, maybe I'll just rely on a reserved copy, and then when I'm in a good position or I do actually have the money to purchase it, I will go ahead and purchase the book at that point. Now we do have another option here, taking advantage of your library in the college. It's called Interlibrary. Interlibrary basically means that you can request books and research materials from any or other colleges and university. Primarily, maybe in the state. I've never seen Interlibrary go nationwide, but the bottom line is that you have access to other colleges and universities that may actually have the book that you're currently required to use in your particular class. Every college has an interlibrary program, and so you have to go to that section of the library and follow their directions to find out exactly what is it that you need to fill out. More importantly, they have certain time frames, so I don't know if that when you place the request, you maybe have to wait a couple of weeks before that happens, and so it's just important to keep that in mind. Amy, anything to add?
Just on the Library Reserve, we actually work with the library before each semester begins, determining classes with the highest enrollments and the most expensive books, and work with them, and then they end up purchasing some of those books to put into the library. So there definitely are some books out there that can be accessed through the library and borrowed on the Library Reserve.
So that I understand, so you mean the library may actually go and purchase that?
Right, the library comes to us, we work through the list of all the books that are being adopted or being used in the upcoming semester, and we help them determine which ones have the classes with the most students in them and that are also of the highest price books, and then they purchase some of those books from us to put on reserve in the library.
Wow.
So it may not be the instructor giving it to them, they actually go out and do some of that work on their own to provide that as a service to the students.
That's very good. Thank you. That's very good. Okay, so let's go ahead and move along. Tip number 5, sharing is caring, so why not a book? Sharing books with friends. When another way to save money is to, especially your friends network, if you feel that, your friend has taken the class before you prior, and they still have it, and they're willing to share the book with you, you may want to consider borrowing textbooks from friends who've previously taken the class. And I've heard of this done, and it has worked out. Now, you have to kind of set up a schedule and agree to that you're going to return the book, or there's certain guidelines that are set up regarding sharing the book. But here's another thing to consider when it comes to sharing books with friends, about splitting the cost of the book if taking the same class. Now, you definitely need to talk very carefully about this with each other as to how is it that you're going to agree to it. But so if a book is, for example, $100 and your friend is going to take the same class with you, maybe you want to split it in half, 50-50, and so buying the book for $50 as opposed to $100 can help you in such a way. But you do have to agree when the book will be borrowed from each other. Granted, you're taking the same class, you're going to have the same midterms, you're going to have the same finals. You want to agree as to who's going to use the book when and what. Or maybe you're going to have to just set up study groups very frequently so that you can rely on the same book many times. Now, also consider studying together. As I mentioned, that definitely works a lot good, and many students really enjoy study groups a lot as well. When it comes time to having to sell the book back or resell, you may want to consider how that's going to work with splitting the cost of the book. I think it would be fair to just split everything in half as well, but I don't know. It really depends, because I'm not sure that when you sell the book back, it's understandable that you may not get the same amount. Is that correct?
Right. You would, if you were selling it back, you would, I guess, have to agree up front what you were going to do with that money, or if one of the two students wanted to keep the book, were they going to buy out from the other one? Or if it's a rental book, then whoever's name, whoever rented the book is going to want to make sure that that book gets returned and off their account so that they're not charged anything additional for that.
Tip number 6. Renting textbooks. This, as I understand, is relatively new. When I went to college, this was not existing at all, but in the last 5 years, renting was introduced and has been picking up and has gotten better. And what I'd like Amy to do is to kind of share with us about the benefits of renting and how does that program work.
Okay, yeah, renting is definitely very new. We had one of the very first pilot programs in the country here at Cal State Northridge about 5 years ago. And it started with just a couple books. Now we have more than half of the books that we carry in the bookstore are available for rent. Renting your books, you can save definitely more than half of the new price per book, and we actually will have some titles this spring semester where you will save upwards to 80% of the new book price. So definitely some big savings out there if you rent your books. The books can be borrowed at the beginning of the semester. You rent them at the cash register like you would purchase, but you pay them much less for that. You can use the book just like you would any other book. Highlight, make notes, etc. As long as you don't highlight every word on every page, you bring it back, you don't drop it in your bathtub, you don't spill coffee on it, you keep it in good shape, you return it at the end of the semester, there's no additional fees. If you decide partway through the semester that you really want to keep the book because it's got important information for your major or whatever the reason is, you can come into the bookstore and let us know that you want to convert that to purchase or buy that book. And we'll just charge you the difference between what you rented it for and what the purchase price for that book would be. The key things to know if you're going to rent your books is that you need a government-issued ID, so your driver's license, your state ID, passport, and a credit card. And you don't have to pay for the rental with a credit card. We just swipe that, it's kept on file, and then if the book is not returned or it's damaged or you don't have a way to produce it because you lost it, then we'll go ahead and charge your card for that. But otherwise, there's no additional fees as long as you bring it back in by the end of finals, at the end of the semester when you're done using it, keep it in good shape, bring it back, you can save yourself a lot of money.
Now I do have, this just came up as a thought and / concern. If a college student does not have a credit card, is there alternatives? If there's no alternatives, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's a credit card / debit card with a Visa MasterCard logo.
Okay.
So if you have your debit card, most people have those today.
True.
Sometimes students don't have that, and a lot of times they'll go to a friend or a family member and ask them to provide that collateral. They're not paying, they're not being charged anything. It's just to keep it on file just in case that book doesn't come back to us.
Okay.
So I think there are some options for people if they don't actually have a physical credit card.
And what I heard too is that you can save to 80% on the book. You also mentioned that 5 years later now, and then many colleges are doing this now with renting textbooks. Over about half, or a little over half of books are now available for rent. Can you put a number to that? Like, are we talking hundreds?
Thousands, actually. We carry just under 4,000 titles in the Matter bookstore, and we're over 2,000 titles that are rentable. That rental library continues to grow. We're always looking for more titles that we can make rentable. If it has a workbook or it has a CD or an access code, those types of books we can't rent because they have a one-time use component to them. Okay. But anything else, we're looking to continue to expand that, to give students these options to make buying their textbooks more affordable. Yeah. You need the books to be able to learn, and we need to make them as affordable as possible so that you can get them in your hands.
Touche, I agree with that. Okay, so let's go ahead and move along to our next tip. Tip number 7, price match. This is a great program. I know that as a consumer, when I go to, let's say, a store to buy clothes or technology or laptop or whatever, I do find that they do have these programs where they can price match if you are finding this particular item cheaper somewhere else. But of course, as we can see here, it applies to textbooks too. And I'd like Amy to go ahead and talk about this program as well.
Okay, this is a really new program. We piloted it for the first semester in the fall this year. So we'll be continuing with it in the spring. And it's very simple. You come in, get your book off the shelf, as long as you can show us on your phone or a printout from either Amazon, and actual Amazon, not Amazon Marketplace, not the person-to-person.
Okay.
So Amazon Chegg or BarnesandNoble.com, and the same item, as long as whatever price it's available for, we will price match it. What we will do is we'll ring it up to the register. You'll pay the same price that's on the shelf, and then we will give you the difference back on a gift card. And you can use that gift card for any subsequent purchase of anything in the bookstore. If you need more books, if you want to get a sweatshirt, supplies, test supplies, whatever it is you might need.
Yeah. And notice that this is actually different than when you do a price match as a consumer outside of school, where usually there they give you the difference, or they give you the lower price there on the spot. But for the textbook program or here on campus, we do it in a different way, where we give you a gift card for the difference, even though you're still having to pay the original price for it. But I think it's a great program, and you just said it just started.
It did. We did it for the first time, like I said, in the fall, and we are going to continue with it again in the spring semester.
Well, I wish it a lot of success, because I think it's just another way of trying to find ways to have students save money. Good. Okay, so let's go ahead and move along to our next tip. Tip number 8, ebooks. Now, ebooks, just as a concept of ebooks, I'm sure it's like a little over 6-7 years old, but it is picking up. I know that libraries definitely have ebooks available for checkout. They're getting cheaper now as a device. You can get a nice ebook for less than $100, if not less than $60. They're definitely often less expensive than new textbooks. Now, when you are purchasing a book, and you could consider one way to save is to see if there's an ebook option available for that particular textbook. You have to be comfortable with the ebook, because you have to weigh the pros and cons. So for example, personally, I still like a physical textbook that I can hold and flip the pages through and highlight and things like that. But maybe you are comfortable with using an ebook and you know how to maximize on that device. I know that it's definitely portable, and you know, when you compare that to a heavy textbook, having an ebook is good. As a matter of fact, you could store a lot of books in it. And so you could probably have all your textbooks in the ebook platform there and be okay. Now, I mentioned that you can also borrow ebooks from libraries. I'm not sure if here on campus they have ebooks that you can borrow, but I know that if you go to your local libraries, that they definitely have ebooks there that, or the devices that you can borrow, and then actually load up books in there too. But you have to just check with your libraries. But if you're open to ebooks, that's another way to save. Any thoughts on that?
We have, and I don't have the number, but we have probably more like 20% of our titles have an ebook version available for them. All of the books that we sell, the ebooks that we sell, are on the Brightwave platform, which means you can access them from your iPad, your tablet, your desktop, your laptop.
Oh, that's good.
And they have, depending on the title, you can print a component of those. You can't. It's usually around 20% of the title that you could print out pages if you so desire.
Oh, okay.
But they also have some great note-taking and highlighting and ways to compile your notes, share your notes with the study groups, share your notes with everybody who's ever read that book before, and to compare and discuss what is contained in that book. So there's a lot of great features in ebooks. I think there's still, people are slowly starting to use them more and more. But there are some great features when you do start to use them.
Good. Definitely something to consider. Just another way to save on college textbooks. Okay. So let's go ahead and talk about our tip number 9, which is public libraries. With a free library card, did you know that you have access to most public libraries? For example, the Los Angeles Public Library, with your library card, you have access to 72 public libraries. And I put that with an exclamation mark because that's amazing. And so that means that using their portal for checking out books, you can search their entire database. And regardless of where the book is, as long as it's in one of their libraries network, you can go ahead and have that book. So another way to save, because books that you check out at the library are free, you could check out a book for 3 weeks and renew it at least twice. And so, you know, that's not a complete semester, but it's helpful. And usually after 2 renewals, if no one is waiting for that particular book or textbook, you can go back and actually check it out just brand new again, like if you had checked it out before. And so it's possible you can actually hold on to the book for the whole semester, but you would have to check up on that particular detail, but that's another way to save. As I mentioned earlier, they do offer an ebook program where they do have the devices that you can check out and use, and then actually load them up with the particular ebook that you would like. What I like also, the convenience of getting email notifications when your books are available or even when they're due. And so as long as you have a valid email address, you can always stay abreast as to what's going on with the book and when it needs to be returned. So I think it's a great resource to consider as a way to save. Would you agree, Amy?
Absolutely. There's some great resources out there.
And our final tip here is selling the books at the end of the semester. Now, when you look at your bookshelf, more specifically books that you have bought for the semester, if you were to resell those books, you would actually be able to get money back that you can then use for future purchases for the following semester to buy books. So if you're wondering, you know, how am I going to purchase next semesters, you may want to consider maybe reselling your books. Now, my understanding is that if the book is in high demand, there is a higher resale value. Do you know what that is?
Yeah, so what that means is it's kind of like a car. We have a blue book for textbooks just like there's blue books for cars. So if there's a book that's only been out for a semester, not many students had it, but a lot of people are using it either at Cal State Northridge or throughout the Cal State system or throughout the U.S. At all colleges and universities. If there's more demand for that book, then we're going to pay more money for it. So if we know a book is going to be used here at Cal State Northridge in the spring semester, we have an order for it, we know that there's going to be 100 people in that class, and we don't have any books on the shelf, then we're going to buy that book back at half of what the new price was, what you paid for it.
50%. That's
50%.
Good. That's good.
If we don't have an order for a book that you're using this semester, we don't know if it's going to be used again next semester, or it's been out in circulation for a long time, or we already have books left over from last semester, so we're not buying that many for this semester, then we're going to pay you what the blue book value is on that book. And that's established by a wholesale company that says this book was $100 retail, but because there's so many of them out there, we're going to pay 10% or we're going to pay 20% for that book.
So it can range from 0 to 30%,
correct.
Depending. Okay.
Yeah. If it's gone into a new edition, it's much harder to predict if an instructor is going to allow their students to use an older edition. So that could be one that's going to be 0. If it's, you know, like I said, if there's not too many of them out there, but we don't have an order for it, then you might get closer to that 30%.
Oh, okay. And then one thing, I'm not sure if Amy, you highlighted on this, but I want to say that if you buy your book somewhere else, could you still sell it at the bookstore?
Absolutely. We will buy books back regardless of where they were purchased originally. So if we need that book, we're going to pay top dollar for it. If we don't need it, we're going to pay you what a wholesale company will pay us for it.
Which I think in the end you win anyways. You get something. If you are ready, and which by the way I have this last point here regarding the 10th tip, is you have to be okay with parting with the book. you have to be sure that you won't be using it the next semester. If it's a book of value because you feel that for the major that you're in, that you're going to continuously use it or rely on it, then I guess it has more value that you keep it and use it. But if you feel that it's something you won't be using in the future, reselling the book and getting either 30% or 50% value of the book is very, very good.
I would just say one other warning on that topic is if you rented your books, be sure that you don't sell your books back. You want to check your book in, and we're going to ask you when you bring it back to the bookstore, if you bring it to us, we're going to say, did you rent any books this semester? We're going to look up your phone number to see if we can check your account. But it's a good idea to remember, if I rented this book, I want to check this one in. I shouldn't get any money for it, because what's going to happen is it's going to show up on the list of books that weren't returned, and if we don't get that book back, then it goes back to that credit card collateral. Then we go and have to charge that collateral because we didn't get that book back checked in as a rental book. Kind of like a videotape back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
You rent a video, you don't return it, they're going to charge you for that video.
Okay.
Same idea.
Well, yes, definitely do the right thing and let them know front. And then just know yourself that rental books you cannot resell. Okay. Okay, good. So as we're getting towards the end of our webinar here, we do want to talk about the process of books available for the next semester, because the key thing to understand here is that if you plan to purchase your books, you're planning for purchasing your books, you can really save a lot of money. Usually we find that if you're in haste, you're quickly trying to get your books and you're not really thinking where you can save some money here and there. It can become a little costly, but there are different ways that you can plan ahead, and one of them is just taking advantage of the schedule of classes and by reviewing that in advance, because my understanding, and Amy can elaborate on this, is that instructors work with the bookstore way in advance to try to set up the book so that the bookstore has enough time to get that book, correct?
Right. We ask for the textbook adoption, which is basically the order for what the instructor wants to use in the upcoming term, several months in advance. So for the spring semester, those orders were due to us in October, middle of October. We don't have them all yet. We're still working on getting them all. But as soon as we have that information, we input it into our system. It's then available online through the Matador Bookstore website. You can go on and see which books are being used for your class. If you go into the scheduled classes, there's actually a little book icon. And when you click on that book icon, it brings up a page. And as long as we have the information, it's going to show the textbook information, all the author title, ISBN information, as well as the pricing, new, used, rental, digital, if there's a digital available. So all the pricing is available. And you can get an idea when you're scheduling your classes how much you're going to be needing to budget for your textbooks.
Yeah, and that's a good thing too, that when you're using that, for example, that feature of being able to see the books that are going to be available, as I mentioned, planning ahead of time, if you want to look somewhere else and other ways to save money based on the tips that we talked before, it's important to just stay on top of that scheduled classes and actually to see. I do want to make a note here that bookstores tend to communicate with faculty about affordable choices too. Could you elaborate on that, Amy?
Absolutely. We work very closely with the faculty when we get their order. So once we know what they want to use, we're going to look and see, is there a rental option for that book? Is there a digital option for that book? Can we get used copies? Can we bring in old editions, because those might be less expensive? So once we know what they want to use, then we're going to work with them to figure out what the best way is to. Should we do a custom book? Have they worked with the publisher to come up with, maybe the publisher suggested that they order a package with a book, a study guide, a CD, an access code, but they know they're only going to use the book. Then we want to order just the book so that we can get used books, so that we're not providing something to the student that they don't need to use for the course.
And on that note too, because I know I was part of that general common wisdom, which is not correct, that bookstores are very expensive. They just charge an arm and a leg for books and things like that. And could you just mystify that? What?
Well, our pricing is set up based on our contracts with the university. And a portion of our sales all go back to the university to support scholarships, to support athletics, to support a variety of different things on campus. But our goal is to help provide that affordable option for the student. It doesn't make any sense for us to bring a bunch of books into the bookstore that nobody wants to buy. So we are always going to see what we can do to play the part of helping bring those costs down. That's why we have the rental. That's why we have the used books. That's why we have the price match program, etc. It's more options to bring those prices down.
And that's one of the things that as we get ready to conclude our webinar here, is that the college bookstores are helpful and advocate for lower prices. And I invite you to see them as an advocate when you go and just ask regarding the textbooks that you're interested in purchasing, and get all the information that you can so you can make the best decision that you can possibly make. To end here, we just want to talk about keeping an open mind to alternative ways to obtaining and purchasing textbooks. Earlier in the presentation or the webinar, we were actually saying that books are expensive or can be expensive, and students have been found to spend $800 to $1,000 per semester. But in the last couple of years, we noticed that students have been open to alternative ways and have been saving money. On average, they've been spending about $500 because of the alternative ways, and we just kind of highlighted 10 tips here. And by being open to purchasing alternatively, you can reduce your student loan and credit card debt because you're planning and you're not purchasing in haste. And give yourself enough time to make a purchase. And more importantly, be aware of return policies, as book information may change before you go to class. And what I mean by that too is making sure that not only do you check with your instructors, but more importantly, check with the campus bookstore if you are purchasing the book there. Any final thoughts?
Well, and also if you're buying your book elsewhere, a common concern that I hear from students is, well, the book changed and I bought it from Amazon and I can't return it, so what am I going to do now? Well, unfortunately, had they bought it from the bookstore, you would be eligible for a refund, as long as you're within the refund period at the beginning of the semester. If you buy it elsewhere, we can't help you with that refund policy. So make sure, if you are going to buy it somewhere else, make sure you understand what the return policy is and what you're going to do if something changes. You change your schedule, the instructor changes, is reassigned to a different class, or the instructor changes the book information because they were going to use book A and they've changed to book B now. Okay. Just make sure you know what you're going to do.
I want to thank Amy for joining me to talk about this topic of how to save money on college textbooks. I really enjoyed learning how the Madrigal Bookstore does their part to advocate for saving.
Absolutely. I appreciate you having me.
I do want to just take a moment and tell you a little bit of our financial literacy program. And the mission of our program here at CSUN, which is the financial literacy program, is to expand students' understanding of money management strategies that will empower them to make wise and informed financial decisions while achieving their educational goals here at CSUN. I invite you to also visit us in social media. We are on Instagram. You can also find us on Facebook, and you can also visit our YouTube channel by typing in CSUN Financial Literacy. Have a good rest of your day.